Observer Velshara stood before the massive viewing screen, her forearms clasped behind her segmented back. The stars outside the observation vessel looked cold and distant, just like they always did. But today felt different. Today she would watch humans fight for the first time. Your instruments are calibrated. High Coordinator Than's voice crackled through the communications panel. The old reptilian's face filled a smaller screen to her left. Yes, Coordinator. All sensors are active. I am ready to document. Velshara's mandibles clicked softly, a habit she had when she was nervous. Good. Remember, this is for the Council archives. We need accurate data on human combat capabilities. They have been expanding into our space for 3 cycles now, but we have never seen them truly fight. Velshara nodded. She had studied humans for 2 years now. They were strange creatures, mammals, soft skin, only 2 arms. They seemed so fragile compared to most species in the galaxy, yet they had built ships that could cross the stars. They had colonies on 17 worlds now. They were loud, emotional, and unpredictable. The Council wanted to know if they were dangerous. Below her position, on the moon called Kepler 4042c, a large fortress sat in a rocky valley. The Kiveth swarm had built it 5 years ago. The Kiveth were pirates, slavers, and murderers. They took what they wanted from weaker species. Everyone knew about them. Everyone feared them. Everyone except humans, apparently. The Kiveth stronghold has approximately 8,000 defenders. Velshara spoke into her recording device. They possess standard projectile weapons, some energy shields, and fortified positions. The human force approaching is estimated at 1,000 soldiers. The tactical situation favors the defenders significantly. She pulled up the analysis the Council computers had generated. The numbers were clear. Humans would lose between 400 and 600 soldiers in this attack. They might even retreat. Most species would. The Kiveth position was simply too strong. Human vessels are entering sensor range, her assistant, a young Kixtari named Jessic, announced from his station. Velshara watched as 23 ships appeared on the screen. They were not huge, not like the Great War dreadnoughts the Krethax used. These were smaller, faster. They moved in formation, precise and careful. They are not charging, Velshara observed. Interesting. Most species she had studied would either bombard from space or rush forward with all their strength. It was how war worked. You hit the enemy hard and fast. You overwhelmed them with force. The human ships were doing something different. They spread out. Each one took a position around the moon, forming a perfect sphere. No gaps, no weak points. Within minutes, every possible escape route from the surface was covered. They are establishing a blockade, Jessic said. No one can leave that moon now. But they are not attacking. Velshara clicked her mandibles again. Why not attack? She watched for another hour. The human ships just stayed in position. On the surface, her sensors showed that the Kiveth were moving troops, getting ready for an assault that was not coming. They were confused too. Then finally something happened. Small objects began launching from the human ships. Hundreds of them. They fell toward the surface like metal rain. Velshara zoomed in her sensors. Drop pods, she recorded. Humans are deploying ground forces. They are landing in unusual positions. The pods were not hitting the fortress. They were landing all around it. Miles away in some cases. They were hitting small outposts, supply roads, and communication towers, places that seemed unimportant. I do not understand their strategy, Jessic admitted. Velshara did not either, but she kept watching. The humans emerged from their pods in small groups. 10 or 12 soldiers each. They wore heavy armor that made them look even bigger than they were. They carried weapons that seemed too large for their frames, and they moved like nothing Velshara had ever seen. Each group worked together perfectly. No wasted movement, no confusion. They would approach a target, eliminate any defenders in seconds, then move to the next objective. There was no shouting, no chaos, just quiet, efficient work. Within 3 hours, every supply line to the Kiveth fortress was cut. Every communication relay was destroyed. Every small outpost was captured or eliminated. The fortress was alone. They are not trying to take the stronghold by force, Velshara said slowly, understanding finally dawning. They are isolating it, cutting it off from help. A siege? Jessic asked. But that takes time. Weeks, sometimes months. Perhaps humans think differently about time. Velshara intercepted some Kiveth communications. The pirate leaders inside the fortress were angry. They were shouting at each other. Some wanted to break out. Others wanted to wait for rescue. They were not working together anymore. The humans had not even attacked the main fortress yet, and the Kaveth were already panicking. Night fell on the moon. Velshara expected the fighting to stop. Most species did not fight well in darkness, but her sensors showed the humans were still moving. They had night vision technology. They owned the darkness. By dawn, the situation had changed completely. The fortress was surrounded by human soldiers, not in one big army, but in dozens of small groups. They had dug positions, set up weapons, created a ring of metal and firepower that completely encircled the Kaveth stronghold. Estimate of human casualties so far? High Coordinator Than asked during a check-in call. Velshara checked her records. 7 wounded, none killed. Coordinator, the humans have suffered almost no losses. There was silence on the communication line. That cannot be correct. Check your instruments. I have checked 3 times. The humans have been extraordinarily efficient. More silence. Then, continue observing. The real battle has not started yet. Velshara knew he was right. The Kaveth would not just sit in their fortress forever. They had 8,000 troops. The humans had maybe 1,000 on the ground. The Kaveth still had the advantage in numbers. A Kaveth patrol emerged from the fortress. 50 soldiers, heavily armed. They were going to test the human lines. Velshara watched closely. This would be the first real battle between the two forces. The patrol moved into a rocky area about 2 miles from the fortress. The humans had a small squad there. 12 soldiers against 50. The Kaveth should have won easily. The fight lasted 47 seconds. Velshara watched in stunned silence as the humans moved with impossible coordination. They knew exactly where each enemy was. They fired from multiple angles at once. They used the terrain like they had lived there for years instead of hours. The Kaveth tried to fight back, tried to find cover, tried to retreat. None of it mattered. When the shooting stopped, all 50 Kaveth were down. 12 humans stood victorious. Not one of them was even injured. Replay that, Velshara demanded. She watched it again. And again. Each time she understood less. The precision was impossible. The coordination was beyond what organic beings should be capable of. The humans fought like they shared one mind, but each one also acted independently when needed. How did they do it? Hypothesis may require revision. Velshara spoke into her recorder. Her voice was not as steady as it should have been. Humans may be significantly more dangerous than initial projections indicated. Above the moon, the human ships maintained their perfect blockade. On the surface, human soldiers tightened their circle around the fortress. And inside that fortress, 8,000 Kaveth pirates were learning that they had made a terrible mistake. They had thought humans were just another weak species, just more prey. Velshara was beginning to suspect they were very, very wrong. The real battle had not even started yet, and she was already afraid of what she might see. 18 hours had passed since the humans landed. Velshara had not slept. She could not look away from the screens showing the moon's surface. The Kaveth fortress sat in complete darkness now. The humans had destroyed the power generators outside the walls. The pirates had backup power inside, but it was limited. They were rationing it, using lights only when necessary. They must be terrified in there, Jessic said quietly. Velshara agreed. The Kaveth were tough fighters. They had raided hundreds of worlds. They feared very few things in the galaxy. But sitting in the dark, surrounded by an enemy they could not see, not knowing when the attack would come, that would break anyone's courage, and the humans knew it. Velshara had intercepted something strange an hour ago. Human broadcasts. They were transmitting on every frequency, making sure the Kaveth could hear them. But they were not making threats. They were not demanding surrender. They were just talking. Sector 7 is now secure. All civilians found in that area have been evacuated safely. They are receiving food and medical care. Medical station operational at Grid 23. Any wounded may approach under a white flag. We will treat anyone who needs help. Kaveth forces, you are surrounded. Your supply lines are cut. No reinforcements are coming. You have 2 choices. Surrender peacefully or wait for us to come in. Either way, this ends soon. The voice was calm, matter of fact, like a teacher explaining something simple to a student. There was no anger in it, no excitement, just patience. It was somehow more frightening than any threat would have been. Velshara had also noticed something else. The humans were letting some people leave. Civilians who had been trapped in the area, forced to work for the Kaveth. The humans gave them food, checked them for injuries, and sent them away on transport ships. They were actually keeping their promises about safety. This is unusual, Velshara recorded. Most species separate military and civilian concerns completely. Humans appear to consider civilian safety a priority, even during active combat operations. This may be a weakness, or it may be something else. Inside the fortress, the Kiveth leaders were arguing. Velshara could hear their communications. Some wanted to surrender. The situation was hopeless, they said. The humans had them trapped. But the Kaveth commander, a brutal creature named Korthak, refused. They are soft mammals, he snarled. They care too much about innocent lives. They will not dare attack while we have hostages. We wait. We make them afraid. Then we break out when they are weak. Velshara felt a chill run down her carapace. The Kaveth had 2,000 civilians inside that fortress. Workers, servants, captives from a dozen different species. Korthak was planning to use them as shields. Would the humans back down? Many species would. The cost of civilian lives often stopped military action. It was considered honorable to value innocent life over victory. But Velshara was beginning to think that humans did not see things the way other species did. 6 hours later, her suspicion was confirmed. Korthak sent out a message on all channels. He had executed 10 civilians. He showed their bodies on video. "Back away from our fortress," he demanded. "Or 10 more die every hour." "You cannot stop us without killing hundreds of innocents. So leave or their blood is on your hands." Velshara waited for the human response. Would they retreat? Would they try to negotiate? A human voice came over the communications channel. Female, calm, cold as the space between stars. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UNSC Retribution. Korthak, you have just made a serious mistake. We offered you mercy. We gave you chances to surrender. We tried to end this without more bloodshed. You have chosen a different path. Very well. All mercy protocols are now rescinded. Your command structure is now designated as a hostile target. Precision strike authorized. Civilian safety remains our highest priority. But you personally and everyone who follows your orders, you no longer have the option of surrender. We are coming for you." The transmission ended. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Velshara saw something that made her mandibles freeze in shock. The human soldiers were moving. All of them. At once, they were not charging the fortress. They were repositioning. Every squad moved to new locations with perfect timing. They were surrounding the fortress at even tighter range now, setting up weapons that Velshara had not seen them use before. Big ones, powerful ones. What are they doing? Jessica asked. "I believe," Velshara said slowly, "they are preparing to keep their promise." She checked the human biometric readings. Something had changed. Before, the humans had shown steady heartbeats, calm breathing, professional detachment now. Now they were different. Not panicked, not angry, not exactly, but focused in a way that seemed almost frightening. They had been holding back before. Playing nice, following rules that they had made for themselves. Korthak had just made them stop playing. Coordinator. Velshara sent an urgent message to High Coordinator Than. "I believe the actual assault is about to begin. The humans have been restrained until now. That restraint appears to be ending." "Acknowledged," Than replied. "Record everything. The council must see this." The Kaveth tried to break out 6 hours after Korthak's message. 2,000 troops poured out of the fortress from the eastern gate. They charged toward the human lines, weapons firing, screaming their war cries. Velshara had studied military history. She knew that sometimes sheer numbers and courage could overcome superior tactics. 2,000 against 90. Those were good odds, even against skilled enemies. But these were not just skilled enemies. The humans had known the breakout was coming. They had positioned themselves perfectly for it. They had set up interlocking fields of fire. They had prepared the terrain. They had done everything except announce exactly when and where they expected the attack. The Kaveth charge lasted 11 minutes. Velshara tried to count the Kaveth casualties. She stopped at 400, then 600, then she just stopped counting. The humans barely moved from their positions. They just fired, reloaded, and fired again. Their aim was perfect. Their timing was perfect. They worked like machines, but they were not machines. They were living beings choosing to fight with mechanical precision. When it was over, 1,400 Kaveth lay dead or wounded on the rocky ground. The remaining 600 had retreated back into the fortress. Human casualties, 3 injured. None killed. This is not possible, Jessic whispered. But Velshara had watched it happen, had recorded every second. It was possible. The humans had made it look almost easy. A new transmission from Captain Chen. Korthak, you just sent 2,000 soldiers to die. We gave them every chance to surrender, many did. They are alive and will be treated fairly. The ones who kept fighting are dead. Their deaths are on you, not us. Last chance. Release the civilians. Surrender yourself and your officers, or we come in and take you. Korthak's response was filled with curses and threats. He would never surrender. He would kill every civilian. He would make the humans pay for every step they took. Captain Chen's reply was just 2 words. Your choice. Then the humans stopped broadcasting. They stopped talking entirely. The communications channels went silent. Velshara understood what that meant. The time for talking was over. She checked the chronometer. It was late evening on the moon's surface. In a few hours it would be dawn. They will attack at sunrise, she told Jessic. That is when visibility is best. That is when they can be most precise. They will want to be able to see exactly what they are shooting at, to avoid civilian casualties. How do you know? Because, Velshara said softly, everything I have seen tells me that humans hate wasting life, even enemy life. They will do this as cleanly as possible, which somehow makes them even more terrifying. She settled in to wait for dawn and for whatever horror the humans were about to unleash. Dawn came to Kepler 442c exactly on schedule. The sun rose over the rocky hills, painting the fortress walls in shades of red and gold. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it looked like blood. Velshara had her sensors focused on every human position. She wanted to see how they would attack. Would they use explosives to breach the walls? Would they send tanks? Would they bombard from orbit now that talking had failed? They did none of these things. For the first hour after sunrise, nothing happened at all. The humans just waited in their positions. The Kiveth inside the fortress waited too. Everyone was holding their breath. Then Velshara's sensors picked up something. Movement. Not on the ground, but in the air. Tiny objects, too small to be ships. They were flying toward the fortress, dozens of them. Drones, she identified. Small reconnaissance drones. They are mapping the interior of the fortress. The Kaveth tried to shoot them down. They managed to destroy maybe half. The other half flew through windows, doors, ventilation shafts. They went everywhere. Velshara watched the data streaming back to the human forces. Within 20 minutes, the humans had a complete map of the fortress interior. They knew where every Kaveth soldier was standing. They knew where the civilians were being held. They knew the location of every weapon, every ammunition storage, every piece of equipment. They are gathering intelligence, Velshara recorded, preparing for a precision assault. The patience is remarkable. Most species would have attacked by now. Humans are still preparing. Another hour passed. The sun climbed higher. Inside the fortress, Korthak was screaming at his troops. Velshara could hear it on the intercepted communications. He knew something was coming, but not what. The waiting was destroying his soldiers' nerves. That was the point, Velshara realized. The humans were not just preparing. They were making the Kaveth afraid, making them exhausted, breaking their will before the first shot was fired. Finally, at exactly 0900 local time, it began. Velshara almost missed the start because it was so quiet. No explosions. No announcements. Just sudden movement. Human soldiers began advancing on the fortress from 40 different positions at once. No, not advancing. They were already there. How? Jessic stared at the screens in confusion. When did they get so close? Velshara reviewed the recordings. The humans had been moving closer all night and morning, slowly, carefully, using every bit of cover. They had crawled through rocks and dirt for hours getting into position. While everyone was watching the drones, the humans had been surrounding the fortress at point-blank range. The first breaches happened simultaneously. 40 different points. Doors blown open. Windows shattered. Walls blown inward with shaped charges that sent debris flying inward, not outward, to avoid hitting anyone outside. Human soldiers poured into the fortress. What happened next was something Velshara would remember for the rest of her life. She would see it in her dreams. She would review the recordings hundreds of times, trying to understand how it was possible. The humans moved through the fortress like they had lived there for years. They knew every hallway, every room, every corner. They knew where the enemies were and where the civilians were. They never hesitated, never got confused, never made a mistake. In one corridor, a group of Kaveth soldiers set up a defensive position. They had good cover, good firing angles. 30 soldiers with automatic weapons. Any attacker would have to come straight at them down a narrow hallway. 6 humans approached. They did not charge. They deployed a small drone that flew around the corner. The Kaveth shot at it and missed. While they were distracted, one human rolled a flashbang grenade around the corner. The explosion was blinding and deafening. Before the Kaveth could recover, the humans were among them.
Close combat.
Hand to hand. It was over in seconds. The humans zip-tied the Kaveth who surrendered. They killed the ones who kept fighting. They had medical supplies for the wounded. Then they moved on to the next objective. This scene repeated throughout the fortress, over and over. The humans never stopped moving, never slowed down. They flowed through the building like water, filling every space, overwhelming every defense. In areas where civilians were being held, the humans used non-lethal weapons, gas that put people to sleep without hurting them, stun grenades that disoriented but did not injure. They would clear a room of Kaveth guards, then gently wake the civilians and guide them to safety. In areas where only Kaveth soldiers were present, the humans were not gentle. They were efficient, clinical, deadly. Velshara watched a squad of humans encounter 20 Kaveth in a storage room. The Kaveth opened fire immediately. The humans had already taken cover. They returned fire with perfect accuracy. Every shot hit its target. Within 30 seconds, 15 Kaveth were down. The remaining 5 dropped their weapons and put their hands up. The humans zip-tied them and moved on. They are not angry, Velshara observed with wonder. Look at their biometric readings. They are calm, focused. This is just work to them. They are solving a problem. But they were solving it with brutal efficiency. Kaveth soldiers who fought were killed without hesitation. The humans gave them one chance to surrender, just one. If the Kaveth kept shooting, the humans ended them. Korthak made his last stand in the command center at the heart of the fortress. He had 200 of his best troops with him. They had sealed the heavy doors, set up barricades. They had enough ammunition to fight for hours. The humans did not give them hours. A massive explosion blew the command center doors completely off their hinges. The blast was precisely calculated, strong enough to destroy the doors but not strong enough to hurt anyone deep inside the room. Smoke grenades filled the air. The Kaveth started firing wildly, unable to see their targets. The humans came through the smoke like ghosts. They had thermal vision. They could see perfectly. The Kaveth were blind and panicking. It was not even a fair fight. Korthak himself was cornered by Captain Chen. Velshara watched through a human helmet camera as the Kaveth commander raised his weapon. Chen shot him in the arm before he could fire. The weapon fell from his grip. He reached for a knife on his belt. Chen shot his other arm. "You murdered civilians," Chen said quietly. "You used innocent people as shields. You had every chance to avoid this. Remember that when they put you on trial." Then she moved past him, leaving him for other soldiers to arrest. She had more rooms to clear, more enemies to deal with. She did not waste time on speeches. The entire assault lasted 14 minutes from first breach to final room cleared. When it was over, Velshara pulled up the final statistics. Her hands were shaking as she recorded them. Kaveth casualties, 2,847 killed in combat. 1,200 captured alive. These were the ones who had fought or given orders to fight. Civilians rescued 1,989 individuals from 17 different species. Medical treatment provided to 341 wounded. Food and shelter provided to all. Human casualties, 11 wounded. 2 killed in action when a Kaveth detonated an explosive device. This was not a battle, Velshara said into her recorder. This was an extermination. The Kaveth never had a chance. The humans controlled every aspect of this operation from beginning to end. They lost 2 soldiers because of a suicide attack they could not have predicted. Otherwise, this would have been a perfect victory. She paused, trying to find the right words. The most disturbing part is that the humans were still holding back. They followed strict rules. They tried to save enemy lives when possible. They protected civilians even when it put them at risk. This was restrained violence, controlled, precise. I do not want to imagine what would happen if humans ever decided to stop restraining themselves. Jessic was staring at the screens in silence. Finally, he spoke. Are they the most dangerous species in the galaxy? Velshara thought about it. No, she said slowly. They are worse than that. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, who are also trying to be good. That combination is terrifying. 3 days after the assault, Velshara received permission to visit the surface. She needed to see it with her own eyes, not just through sensors. She needed to understand. The human transport ship that picked her up was clean and efficient. The crew was polite. They called her Observer and treated her with respect. They seemed completely unbothered by the fact that they had just killed almost 3,000 beings. The landing site was outside the fortress. Temporary buildings had been set up. Medical tents, food distribution centers, housing for the rescued civilians. Everything was organized. Efficient. The humans worked quickly but not frantically. They had done this before, Velshara realized. Many times, a human soldier met her at the landing pad. Young, female. She wore the armored uniform but carried no weapon at the moment. Her name tag said Rodriguez. Observer Velshara, Captain Chen is expecting you. Please follow me. They walked through the temporary camp. Velshara saw the rescued civilians. They were eating, receiving medical care. Some were talking to human officials, probably giving information about other Kaveth operations. The humans were treating them well. No one was imprisoned. No one looked afraid. How are you processing so many people? Velshara asked. Rodriguez smiled. Standard refugee protocols. We identify them, check for injuries or illness, provide immediate care, then arrange transport to wherever they want to go. Most species have consulates that help with repatriation. We cover the costs. You pay to send them home? Of course. They were victims. Why would we charge them? Velshara had no answer. Most species would have considered these people a burden, a problem to be solved as cheaply as possible. Humans were spending resources on them voluntarily. Captain Chen was in what used to be the Kaveth Command Center. The room had been cleaned. The bullet holes remained, but the blood was gone. Chen stood over a table covered with maps and data pads. She looked up when Velshara entered. Observer, thank you for coming down. I thought you might have questions. I have many questions, Captain. Chen gestured to a chair. Please sit. Ask whatever you want. Velshara settled into the chair. It was not designed for her body, but she made it work. Why did you not bombard from orbit? You could have destroyed the fortress in minutes. No risk to your soldiers. Chen nodded like she had expected this question. 2,000 civilians were in this fortress. Orbital bombardment would have killed all of them. That was not acceptable. But you lost 2 soldiers in the assault. Good soldiers, I assume. Trained. Valuable. Would it not have been more logical to sacrifice the civilians to save your own people? Chen's expression hardened. No, it would not. Observer Velshara, do you know what makes us human? I am not sure I understand the question. Humans have the ability to do terrible things. We can be violent, destructive. We have killed each other in massive numbers throughout our history. We have weapons that could destroy entire planets. Chen paused. But we also have the ability to choose not to. We can decide that some things matter more than efficiency, more than safety, more than victory. The lives of innocent people matter, even when protecting them costs us something. This seems inefficient. Yes, Chen agreed. It is, but efficiency is not our highest value. Doing what is right is our highest value. Sometimes those things align. Sometimes they do not. We accept the cost. Velshara clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. What about the Kaveth who were executed after they surrendered? Chen's face went cold. No one was executed. Every Kaveth who surrendered was taken alive. Every single one. Even Korthak, who I personally wanted to kill. He is in custody now. He will face trial for his crimes, but I saw, during the fighting, you saw us kill Kaveth who were actively trying to kill us or the civilians. That is not execution. That is combat. We gave them all chances to surrender. Many took those chances and are alive now, the ones who chose to keep fighting. We ended the threat they posed. Quickly and efficiently. Velshara understood the distinction, but it still seemed impossible. How do your soldiers stay so calm? When Korthak killed those civilians, I saw the anger in your voice. But your soldiers did not rage. They did not seek revenge. They just worked. Chen walked to the window. Outside, human soldiers were helping civilians board transport ships. We felt everything, she said quietly. Rage, grief, hatred, the desire for revenge. Every single one of us felt those things. But you did not show it. We controlled it, Chen corrected. There is a difference. Observer, do you know what discipline is? Following orders, maintaining structure. That is part of it. But real discipline is controlling yourself even when every instinct is screaming at you to lose control. We were angry. We wanted to hurt the Kaveth who had murdered innocents. But we did not let that anger make our decisions for us. We stayed focused. We followed our training. We did our jobs. Why? Chen turned back to face her. Because anger makes you sloppy. Revenge makes you stupid. If we had let our emotions control us, more people would have died. Maybe civilians, maybe our own troops. Probably both. We can feel everything and still choose to act rationally. That is what makes us effective. Velshara was beginning to understand. You are predators who learn to think while hunting. Chen smiled slightly. That is actually a good description. Yes, we are very good at violence. We have practiced it for thousands of years. We have refined it into a science. But we have also learned to control it, to use it only when necessary, to stop when the job is done. What if you did not stop? What if you decided that restraint was not necessary? The smile vanished. Then we would be monsters, and the galaxy would be right to fear us. She said it simply. Honestly, no pride. No threat, just a statement of fact. Velshara stood. I must report to the council. They will ask me questions. They will want to know if humans are dangerous. What will you tell them? The truth. That humans are the most dangerous species I have ever observed. That you combine technological sophistication with tactical brilliance, with the discipline to use violence precisely. That you care about things other species do not care about, and that makes you unpredictable. She paused. But also that you follow rules. That you value life, even enemy life. That you can be reasoned with. That is fair, Chen said. We are dangerous. But we are not evil. There is a difference. I am beginning to understand that difference. Velshara moved toward the door, then stopped. Captain Chen, one more question. You said doing what is right is your highest value. But who decides what is right? Different species have different ideas about morality. Chen considered this. That is a good question. Humans argue about morality constantly. We do not always agree, but we have some principles that most of us accept. Innocent life should be protected. Suffering should be minimized. People should be free to make their own choices. Those who harm others without cause should be stopped. Not perfect rules, but they guide us. And when you encounter species who do not share these values, then we have a problem, Chen said quietly. The Kavath harmed innocents. They enslaved and murdered without remorse. They made themselves our enemy. We tried to resolve it peacefully. They refused. So we removed the threat, permanently. What if a species disagreed with you about something less clear? Not slavery or murder, but something more complicated? Then we would talk, negotiate, try to find a compromise. We do not believe we have all the answers. We make mistakes. But when someone crosses the line into hurting innocent people, Chen's expression hardened. Then talking stops. Then we act. That is our line in the sand. Velshara left the fortress with much to think about. She had come to observe humans in combat. She had witnessed something that looked like a massacre. But it had not been senseless violence. It had been controlled, purposeful, restrained until restraint was no longer possible, then executed with precision. Humans were not monsters. But they could do monstrous things when they decided it was necessary. The key word was decided. They chose when to be violent. They chose when to stop. That control, that choice made them more frightening than any species. That was simply violent by nature. A species that could not control its violence was predictable, avoidable. A species that controlled its violence perfectly and could deploy it at will, that was something else entirely. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated areas, waiting for Velshara to present her findings. The chamber was carved from a single massive asteroid with viewing screens covering every wall. High Coordinator Than sat at the center, his reptilian face impassive. Observer Velshara, you have spent 2 weeks analyzing human combat capabilities. The Council is eager to hear your assessment. Velshara approached the central platform. Her forearms carried data pads and recording devices. She had spent countless hours preparing this presentation. She had reviewed every second of footage. She had checked every calculation. She was still not sure the council would believe her. Honored council members, she began. I was assigned to observe humans in combat, to determine their threat level and military capabilities. I observed a single engagement on Kepler 442c. What I witnessed has led me to conclude that our previous assessments of humanity were significantly flawed. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Than raised a hand for silence. Explain. Velshara activated the screens. Combat footage began playing. The Kaveth swarm maintained a fortress with 8,000 defenders. A human force of approximately 1,000 soldiers was sent to neutralize this position. Our projections estimated human casualties at 40 to 60%. Possible retreat. Standard aggressive mammalian tactics, she paused. The actual result was 2,147 Kaveth killed, 1,200 captured. Human casualties, 2 killed, 11 wounded. The operation lasted 31 hours from landing to completion. The murmurs grew louder. A Vrelian delegate stood, her crystalline body refracting the light. Those numbers cannot be correct. 8-1 odds. Fortified position. The defenders should have won. The defenders never had a chance, Velshara replied. She showed more footage. Humans do not fight the way we expected. They do not rely on superior numbers or technology. They rely on superior tactics, coordination, and patience. She showed the initial landing, the careful isolation of the fortress, the cutting of supply lines. They did not attack immediately. They took time to position themselves perfectly, to gather intelligence, to prepare. Most species would have charged forward. Humans waited. More footage. The failed Kaveth breakout. When the enemy did exactly what the humans predicted, the response was devastating. Watch their movements. Every soldier knows exactly what every other soldier is doing. They fight as individuals but move as a single organism. I have never seen coordination like this. A Krethak's military commander stood. Coordination can be trained. What makes humans special? They combine many advantages, Velshara explained. Superior training, advanced technology, excellent tactics, but those things alone do not explain their effectiveness. The key is something else, something harder to quantify. She showed footage of Captain Chen talking to a Kaveth prisoner. The gentleness, the medical care being provided. Then she showed footage of the assault, the brutal efficiency, the clinical precision. Humans have the ability to be extraordinarily violent when necessary, but they also have the ability to choose when that violence is necessary. They can kill without hesitation, then immediately switch to providing medical care to wounded enemies. They can destroy a fortress in 14 minutes, then spend days helping the survivors. This flexibility, this control, I have never encountered anything like it. Than leaned forward. Are you saying humans are more dangerous than our military projections indicated? Yes, Coordinator. Significantly more dangerous. Velshara pulled up her final analysis, but not in the way we usually think about danger. Humans are not rampaging beasts. They are not mindlessly aggressive. They are calculated, strategic. They follow rules strictly until someone crosses a line, then they become utterly ruthless. The Kaveth murdered civilians. That was the line. Once it was crossed, the humans stopped offering mercy. She showed the execution statistics. Every Kaveth who surrendered was taken alive. Every single one. But every Kaveth who continued fighting was eliminated without hesitation. Humans gave their enemies choices. Those who chose surrender lived. Those who chose violence died. The humans made it very clear which choice was wiser. A small Quileth delegate spoke up, her voice nervous. Should we be afraid of humanity? Velshara considered the question carefully.
Fear them?
Yes, but do not make them your enemy. Humans are dangerous to those who threaten innocence, who ignore diplomatic solutions, who choose violence over peace. But they are also potential allies. They value the same things many of us value. Life, freedom, justice. They are willing to die for those principles. More importantly, they are willing to kill for them. She showed the footage of civilians being evacuated, fed, given medical care. Humans protected people who were not even their own species. They spent resources on refugees. They took risks to minimize civilian casualties. This is not weakness. This is a different kind of strength. The strength to remain moral even when being immoral would be easier. Than spoke again. What are your recommendations? Humanity should immediately be elevated to Tier 2 status in our threat assessment protocols. potentially Tier 1 within a generation as they continue to develop. We should establish stronger diplomatic ties, open trade negotiations, cultural exchanges. We should make humans our friends, not our enemies, because if we ever fight them— Velshara paused. I do not believe we would win. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates arguing, questioning, denying. Than called for order. This is a serious claim, Observer. You believe humanity could defeat the combined forces of the Galactic Council? I believe humanity could make victory so costly that it would not be worth achieving. They are not the largest military, not the most advanced technology, but they are adaptable, creative, persistent, and they learn quickly from every engagement. Every battle makes them better. I watched them analyze their own performance after the assault, looking for ways to improve. Even in victory, they seek perfection. She showed her final clip, Captain Chen standing over Korthak. The restraint, the controlled anger, the choice to take him alive for trial despite personal desire for revenge. This is what makes humans truly dangerous. Not their weapons, not their tactics, their discipline, their ability to control themselves even in the worst circumstances. A species that cannot control its violence is predictable. A species that controls it perfectly can deploy it strategically. Humans are the second type. Than was silent for a long moment. The Council will deliberate on your recommendations. You have given us much to consider. The session ended. Delegates filed out, talking in worried voices. Velshara remained on the platform, reviewing her notes one last time. Jessic approached her. Do you think they will listen? I hope so. For all our sakes, now, you really believe humans are that dangerous? Velshara looked at her assistant. I believe humans are as dangerous as they choose to be. That is what frightens me. They fought with restraint on Kepler 442c. They followed rules. They tried to minimize casualties. But they could have done it differently. They could have been much worse. They chose not to be. Choices can change. Exactly. Right now, humans want to be good. They try to be moral. They follow principles. But if something changed, if they decided that restraint was no longer necessary— Velshara trailed off. I do not want to see what humans could do if they stopped holding back. The Kiveth learned that lesson. It destroyed them. She packed her recording devices and data pads. Her work here was done. The report was filed. The Council would make their decision. As she left the chamber, she thought about Captain Chen's words. We are dangerous, but we are not evil. There is a difference. The galaxy needed to understand that difference, needed to respect it. Because humans were offering friendship and alliance, they were choosing to be partners instead of conquerors. They were choosing restraint over domination, but they were still choosing. And choices could always change. Velshara hoped the galaxy would be wise enough to accept the friendship while it was offered. Because she had seen what happened when humans stopped being friendly. She had witnessed them remove a threat with precision and efficiency. She had watched them dismantle an enemy force 8 times their size without breaking a sweat. The Kiveth had thought humans were weak, soft, easy prey. They had learned otherwise. They had learned that humans were predators who had taught themselves philosophy, hunters who had learned to think, warriors who had learned to choose. The galaxy needed to learn that lesson too. Needed to understand what humanity really was. Velshara had been sent to observe humans in combat. She had witnessed what looked like a massacre, but it had not been senseless killing. It had been controlled violence, precise, purposeful, limited only by human choice. And that, more than anything else, was what made humanity truly formidable. Not their capacity for violence, but their capacity to choose when and how to use it. That was the lesson. That was the warning. That was the hope. The galaxy had encountered humanity. Now it needed to decide what to do about it. Velshara hoped they chose wisely.